All right, y'all, let's talk about gender and sex in this bigger conversation that the country is having right now through a German new medicine lens. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about sex, and then I'm going to go into the idea of gender. In this video, we'll answer number one from a scientific German new medicine lens. It'll give evidence as to what causes someone to adapt and then feel more male or more female while being in, let's say, in a male body feeling more female or in a female body feeling more male, what actually causes that based on brain scans, based on interviews, based on a scientific process and series of over 40,000 interviews and scans that we've yet to find one exception to. Right? This is a really comprehensive body of work. So I'm going to share, number one, what's going on in the biology to cause that. People would call it gender dysmorphia. I'm going to give a different definition. But it's going to also answer some of the more philosophical questions through a biological lens, which might seem paradoxical, but has some pretty radical implications. So, number one, sex. Every person on the planet, every human being is either born, well, number one, if they're born in a male body, they're born with a male hormonal status. If they're born in a female body, they're born with a female hormonal status. What does that mean? Their hormones are such that they have the ability to reproduce. Now, again, if a male completely loses his male hormones, he could become infertile and vice versa with females. Now, I give that definition, but it's a little more nuanced. So I know I said only. They only come in with that. There are incredibly rare exceptions, but we haven't documented this in the German New Medicine lens. And I'm going to explain more about that later. But in short, you are born, majority of us, if not all so far, because I don't know if we've actually documented an exception with a brain scan. So that's still kind of open. There's still more research that needs to be done. But a male, let's just work with a male. A male born will have a male hormonal status. They'll have a certain amount of male hormones that is their native status, what they're born with. Same with female. And that will always correlate with their sex, with their chromosomes, with their genitals. So let's say there's a male born and that male's hormones are totally imbalanced, and they grow up and they've just never remembered a time that their hormones were balanced or they felt like a man, they felt like a female their entire life. Well, to explain that, I first have to explain the cause of this kind of internal transition in gender that may oppose sex, which is our biology. Gender is the social construct. That's how it's defined, right? So let's start with some science. If a male, and I'll use the wolf pack, this is very common in German New Medicine. If a male loses his territory. Now, first of all, what are these terms? These are biological terms. These are terms that we would use to observe mammals, and we are mammals. And in fact, the brain scans and the conflicts that we experience, there's an entire body of work with Dr. Hammer who has found majority of those conflicts are found in the animal kingdom as well. So let's look at a wolf pack. Number one, if a male loses his territory. Now, what is a male's territory? A male's territory is more external, whereas a female's territory is more internal. The male will consider his territory his biological counterpart, a woman. And when the man claims a woman, or let's say the wolf claims a female wolf, that man will protect that female wolf because, again, in the animal kingdom, only the alpha male, you see this with monkeys as well, only the alpha male gets to mate. So it's a battle over the female. The alpha male gets the female and then has to protect that female and its status as alpha. Now, what if that male is challenged and loses? Well, he's no longer the alpha, and he either dies or gives up his position as alpha and gives over his woman, female wolf, to the new alpha, or he will die. Now, with high levels of testosterone, you will have a certain degree of aggression. Now, aggression isn't inherently bad. Females want an aggressive man, not a domineering man, but an aggressive man. That's an attractive trait of a male. Now, nature's way of balancing this out and creating order and making sure the species lives on is for that alpha male who, let's say, got in a fight with another male, loses, that wolf will suffer a territory loss conflict because he's losing his woman who he considers his territory. Ask any man, when you have a woman that is your partner, you will feel possessive. You will want to protect her, you will want to take care of her, and you will be willing to fight other men if they were to attack her or want to take her from you. So back to the wolf analogy. Let's say that man loses, he suffers a territory loss conflict. Now nature's medicine, which is what we see in German New Medicine, is that's what nature is. We already have built-in adaptation in us. 9 times out of 10, we don't need anything external. Anyway, the loss of territory hits the male side of the temporal lobe, which is actually the right side of the temporal lobe. Now, this gets a little complicated. I'm not going to get into handedness for now, but for right hand, it's going to hit the right side. For left-handers, it'll hit the other side. But for this example, say it's just the wolf. It's hitting the right side. It's hitting the male side. And if that conflict load is intense, meaning if it was a shocking near-death experience, that wolf would have a lowering, a decline in testosterone. Now, let's say the next thing that happens is the wolf is attacked by other packs of wolves, and they're constantly being attacked. And let's say that wolf is experiencing a territory anger conflict, right? Which in biological terms just means the inability to defend your territory from invaders, right? Now you're having multiple conflicts on the right side. These are all the right side temporal conflicts have to do with territory. If we go back to evolutionary biology, we'll see that as we grew and adapted, and I would say God, not just nature, but God created us in a way that we can adapt to certain situations in order to continue to survive and reproduce, that our bodies are on our team in that sense. And so one way is, okay, if there's territory anger, then I'm going to go into a conflict active state. I can't defend my territory. So there's going to be this impulse of energy. You know, in the animal kingdom, we might call that rage. It's less of an emotion than it is a physiological response. It's like if you hold down an animal, initially they're going to rage, they're going to try to be set free. So that's not really the same as an emotion. That's more of a survival response. And then you're going to come out of that and you're going to rest and digest, and you're going to go into a healing phase. That's when you'll be very tired. That's when there might be some inflammation. That's when you need to repair anything that happened in the conflict active phase, any of the adaptations. So back to this example, because both of those are territory conflicts, that wolf is going to all of a sudden become a bit gaily fixated, or homosexual, but gaily fixated on the alpha. Why do they do this? Well, they can't defend their territory. They can't, they're not the leader of the pack. They can't have sex with that woman anymore. This alpha almost killed them. They go, okay, how now do I get the alpha's protection? I become like the females. I become buddy-buddy. I offer myself as not threatening. And this nature automatically takes care of this. God's design expressed through nature takes care of this by having that the hormones and the drive, the sex drive, change in that wolf for its own protection. Now just look at that same scenario, but with humans. Now, maybe you lose your mother at a really young age. You are left at daycare, and something about how your psyche is interpreting it, which again, German New Medicine shows us the order of causation for all disease, is psyche, brain, organ. So imagine being left at daycare, being unexpected. This is the first time you're being left from your mother. You have no idea when she's going to come back. You feel shocked, overwhelmed, and isolated. You might have a territory loss conflict. Who is the male's first territory? Mother. Why? Because that's the source of food and life and love and nurturing, which are all required for survival. So an unwanted separation from mother, and then let's say a scary father. So now you have this invader in your territory, father. You're separated from your territory. Now your male side is having all of these conflicts, and your biology is going, okay, I'm obviously not the alpha, and I need protection. So I'm going to become a little more docile, a little more feminine, a little more inward, not so assertive because it's not safe, and I'm going to be fixated on mother. Right? I'm going to be fixated to get protection there. And so this can also change a man's sexual orientation. If that temporal lobe, essentially what happens is you become temporal. What was the phrase? Temporally castrated. You become essentially castrated, your maleness, when the conflict load on your temporal lobe. Sorry, I keep pointing at that one. On your temporal lobe becomes so intense, it actually will shut down, and your testosterone will absolutely tank. You'll be tired. You'll be depressed. You'll be more concerned about your emotional state. You may want a partner as a woman if it's not like everyone's gonna become homosexual. It just depends. You might want a partner as a woman, but more for just to be held or supported and loved, kind of like a mother figure. Or your sexual orientation may completely change. You might start being attracted to men because, again, it's not safe. If your maleness is gone, your biology is going, I'm not the alpha. Other men are, and it's a threat for me to date and assert myself and to be male because I could die. Because all biological conflicts cue into our survival instinct where we believe we're going to die. It's all about, in biology, it's all about survival and reproduction. So let's say you lose, you're separated, unwanted separation from mother, territory, anger, and this, the temporal lobe starts shutting down at a really young age. Well, if I'm attracted to a male, I'm not a threat to that male because I'm not a threat to that male's territory, which is his woman. Males have more territory than just a woman. They consider their work, their ideas, their property, their man cave, their woman, their money, all of that they consider their territory. And when there's invaders, oh man, that's it's one way to piss a man off. So you would the adaptation is, okay, if I can get close to a man, then I'm going to be safe. Because number one, then I don't need a mother that's going to leave me and unwantedly separate from me. And I'm not going to be attacked, neglected, ignored, whatever, from my father. I'm not going to be seen as a threat. So I'll become a non-threatening male. So because the hormonal change happens, that male is now swinging to what's called a female hormonal status. Testosterone, other male hormones will lower, female hormones will rise, and this is the more feminine man. Now, again, nothing wrong or bad with being a feminine man. This is a natural adaptation, and that's what I really want to drive home in this as well. People, being homosexual isn't natural. It is natural. It's an adaptation to a series of shocking biological conflicts that will shut down your maleness, that will shut down your male hormonal temporal lobe. And now, because those hormones change, you will perceive yourself and you will feel totally different. You will not feel like a man. And that is nature's intention. No, don't be a man. Don't compete. You're either going to get overpowered or die because of a man, or that woman is going to leave you. Territory loss, territory anger. There could be other territory conflicts, but I'm just using those two as examples. So it's saying, let me protect you by not putting you in that position again. You're going to be non-threatening, and you're not going to be put in a position where you can re-experience the loss. This is how to cope. So the hormones change, and now your territory changes because hormone status determines how the subconscious, is not of your choosing, the subconscious perceives shocking biological conflicts. For example, if a woman was in the kitchen and a rat ran through, that woman might go, and jump on the counter. Men find that adorable. We love that. Men in a male hormonal status. It's cute. It's adorable. Oh, she's scared. Okay. And then what does the man do? Go after and tries to kill it. Okay, classic difference between a male and his default response, territory anger, kill the invader. The female's response, territory fear, run away and hide. Why? Because of hormones. Her hormones say, I'm not strong and I'm not as strong as a male to fight off the invader. The male says, I have testosterone, I have these genes, I have this bone density, I'm a better fighter, I'm stronger because of my hormones. So my biology is going to encourage me to react one way. Her biology is going to encourage her biology and hormones to act a different way. So if my temporal lobe shut down, which this happened to me temporarily, and I have my brain scans where you could see the impact on my brain, territory loss, territory anger, boom, testosterone went into the dump. Then I had one more conflict, and instead of it going to my right side, now you really got to get this, instead of it going to my right side, the territory conflict, which is territory, I think it actually was territory anger. Instead of, was it? Okay, no, I had territory fear, territory loss, and then instead of having territory anger, which is the male conflict, meaning if I didn't have those other conflicts that shut down my temporal lobe, and I experienced a really noisy neighbor and I couldn't defend my territory, maybe temporarily I'd have a territory anger conflict on my right temporal lobe. Because it shut down and my hormonal status switched, and I was temporarily hormonally female, I was in the same exact position, territory anger, noisy neighbor, can't get this person out, can't defend my territory, poor boundaries. And instead of it showing up on my right male side, it showed up on the female side. And I have the scans. It's unbelievable. So right in that spot, instead of the male territory anger conflict, I had a female identity conflict. Now, why is that important? Because it shows my subconscious was interpreting it as a female would, not as a male. Now, I didn't have any homosexual tendencies because the conflict load wasn't that intense. My testosterone dipped, but it wasn't totally in the tank. But I did have the depression, the slowness, the tiredness, the inwardness, and I was asking the question a lot, God, who am I and where do I belong? And things like, interpersonal relationship, like, connection, emotion, safety were on my mind a lot. And this is more of a feminine experience. So when you're, I'll use specifically from male hormonal to female hormonal, when that switch happens, your perception of territory changes. So I'm going to start perceiving things like a female would in terms of territory. What is a female's territory? Their reproductive organs, their internal emotional state, their sexuality, and their, if it were like be in a home, it would be like where you sleep and reproduce, where the male would be more concerned with the outside, the actual physical home, the borders, the boundaries, and the females, the internalness of the home and the decoration and the bringing life into it, that sort of thing. You see this in animals where the male will pee on the outside of the territory, the female might pee on the inside to claim the territory. So I was filled with questions like, okay, who am I? What is my purpose? Where do I belong? Really motivated by community and feeling safe in community. Once that identity conflict was resolved, I switched back over, right? And that's called a constellation, by the way. Let me make that clear. When you have at least two conflicts, they can hit at the same time or different, there we go, that are opposing one another in the same germ layer. This gets a little complex. Same germ layer in which the parts of the brain grew from in embryology. So for example, the temporal lobe, I think that's new mesoderm, but I could be wrong. But they all came from, I'm pretty sure it's the mesoderm. Yeah, mesoderm. I think I'm tripping. Ectoderm. From the ectoderm. The temporal lobes both grew from the same germ layer. And that part of the brain governs the corresponding organs that also grew and evolved from that germ layer. And there's only 3 germ layers. And it just so happens that, again, the ectoderm gives rise to the temporal lobes, and temporal lobes control hormones, and hormones control how you feel about your gender. I know this is a very long-winded way to get to gender. Now, let me give a definition of gender. Gender is your hormonal status personified in preferences, how you self-reference and reference others, what you value, and how you relate to your territory. A man is very motivated by creating a territory and giving it to a woman, because a woman's biological value is in her ability to reproduce. That's her biological value. A male doesn't necessarily have biological value, because one male can impregnate millions of people with the amount of sperm that they have. So they're not as biologically valuable as a female. And so what nature does is it encourages them to use their testosterone to provide protection, to provide provision, to provide a territory, a home. And men love this. Men in a male hormonal status love to provide for their woman. And so, where was I going with that? Gender. If you look at that man, you might go, okay, if that man identifies as their gender being a male, and you say, okay, that's a social construct, what's it based on? Social norms, whatever you try to base that on, personality type. If you really get to the core of it, you'll see there are just two kind of gender expressions. There's the female hormonal status, where you're going to consider your territory more internal than external. Your motivation is going to change. How you relate to the opposite sex will change. You will probably want, if you're a woman in a more masculine or in a male hormonal status, you'll probably be drawn to a man in a female hormonal status, because this is how nature creates order. When those two come together, the combination of an individual understanding the internal and being connected to the internal, and one connected to the external, one providing territory, one taking care of territory, these are very general examples, is a way to create order. One more connected to emotionality and nurturing, one more connected to structure and to protection and vision and mission and purpose, this sort of thing. So gender, I've heard it argued, is it's like a set of social norms and patterns and ways of being associated with a certain sex. Now, what I hear when I hear that is, okay, first of all, there's only sex. You're male or female. There's nothing in between. Even if you're born with two genitals, there's still, you might be an XXY or XYY. There is still either male or female dominant in the chromosome. And then there's still going to be a native hormonal status, and it's either male or female. There's no such thing as having a male and female hormonal status at the same time, because how you interpret DHS is a moment where you experience a shocking event that was shocking, where you were surprised and overwhelmed, and where there was some degree of isolation. When that happens, you will adapt. Your brain will have these concentric rings visible on a CT scan. And whether it goes to the male side or the female side is going to show you how you're perceiving yourself and life, either from this point of view or that point of view. There's no in between. So if a man loses his maleness, and let's say it's really extreme and his testosterone, let's say, goes down to like 100 points, then he may feel like a woman, because hormonally he is a woman. Hormonally. He's not actually a woman. His body, his biology is not actually a woman. But his hormones, due to adaptation, have become hormonally female. Then he goes, I feel like I'm not a male. And that's true. And that's natural. It's a natural adaptation to a shock. We call it gender dysmorphia. It's not even that. It's different. You'd have to scan the brain of everyone going through it to see what territory conflicts are unresolved. So one main reason I'm putting this out is because when people don't understand this stuff, number one, they rationalize and say you're just born this way. It's bullshit. And if anyone in this extremely rare case was, and the reason I say it's a rare case is because you can't lose your territory while you're in the womb. You're in your territory. This is your first home. So there's no territory loss while you're in the womb. Now, can there be things like territory fear, maybe territory anger? Probably, I don't know. It's really hard to tell. I mean, how could you tell? You'd have to scan the brain of a baby in the womb. So I don't want to leave out the possibility that it's possible that someone can be born with a heavy conflict load in their temporal lobe and have a kind of homosexual fixation from the start. That could happen. It'd be incredibly hard to prove that. Either way, it's not because you were just born that way. Every single time on the brain scan, it is a natural adaptation to a DHS. Every single time. There was a study online, now I think it's been scrubbed, I need to dig it up, I saw it years ago, where they gave men testosterone who were homosexual, and they gave them enough testosterone until they started to desire women sexually again. Of course, that's going to be a controversial one. So again, if you feel like you're a female in a male body, or if you feel like you're a male in a female body, that's natural. There's nothing wrong with you. Your biology has adapted to something ultimately to help you stay safe and survive. That's actually going to be above reproduction, just surviving. Because if you can survive long enough, maybe you can get out of danger and then be safe to reproduce. But it's an adaptation. Now, when it becomes your identity, no, I'm just this. This is what I am. Then it's like you put a layer of denial, like a barrier between where you are and the conflict load that has the potential to be resolved. If you go into complete denial, no, this is who I am, and I have to get a sex change, or I have to do this or that, versus the openness to, okay, wait a second, maybe there are some conflicts I should focus on resolving. Don't focus on trying to change my hormonal status. Don't focus on trying to undo homosexuality. That's not the focus. The focus should be resolve your conflicts and then see what happens. And you can actually scan your brain, get your blood work done, which I have done, and then you can use methods that I teach and other people teach to resolve your conflicts, see how it changes your hormones, and see how different you feel. I would say this to my fiance, her femininity evokes such a masculine aspect to me, of me, but I don't call it masculine, I just call it me. I go, man, I just feel more me. The more that I am around this feminine person and she lets me take care of her, lets me pay for everything, lets me be possessive, and lets me be aggressive, is a stand for my mission. My testosterone, I mean, obviously I've resolved identity conflict, which is in the resolution phase is hemorrhoids. And I had those and I went through that. That's done. I've resolved territory anger, which is nausea. Actually, that was one was very recent. And a fever. I didn't actually throw up, but just a lot of nausea. And then what was the other one? And I resolved territory loss. And I had a period where I had just intense heart pains, stabbing, which is the healing phase of territory loss. So my testosterone ever since and I've been getting blood work every few months, has been steadily climbing. So the reason I say this, let's just conclude with this. Homosexuality is natural. It is God's design, but it is a design that is an adaptation to biologically shocking experiences that organism, that mammal, that human, on the unconscious level said, I need to adapt in order to survive. And the same way we talked about the wolf pack is the same way the male is going to do it. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong or bad about that. But to sustain these kind of conflicts long term, number one, they could be fatal. Number two, you're going to keep reactivating them. You're not going to feel totally free if you're aware of certain conflicts and they keep coming up and arising. You're not going to feel totally free. So resolve conflict, see what happens. So number one, it's natural. It's a natural adaptation to shocking moments. You can call it trauma, but this is a more specific criteria. In resolving conflicts, your hormonal status will change, and often your homosexual tendencies will change. Feeling like a female in a male body is due to a hormonal status change, a change in the female hormone from a male to a female hormonal status. So feeling like a female in a male body is hormonal, and vice versa. And we should really focus this whole conversation on compassion and educating yourself on, man, what does a man have to go through in order to lose his maleness? What does a female have to go through to lose her femaleness? And you might find that you can relate to all of that conflict load, and that there's actually a lot of compassion. And in the illumination of this body of work, we can be a lot more happy, healthy society. So that's all I got. Please share this, and we will see you next time.